If not, the meeting minutes of March 5th were distributed.
Yeah, just for everyone, so that everyone knows this meeting is being recorded and it'll be posted on our website. I just want to say that out loud. I apologize.
Yep.
I can prove the minutes be approved.
Okay, Tim.
Ernie seconds.
Ernie second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Aye.
Okay. The vacation policy amendment, Dan.
So vacation policy amendment. So here's kind of what we got going on, and I would like to kind of get your temperatures on this. Right now, our vacation policy is that when we grant vacation to employees, they have to use a minimum of half of it in the first year that they're given that vacation time, and they can, or they lose that, So if they got 80 hours of vacation time, it's good for 2 years, but at the end of the first year, they have to have used 40 hours, and then at the end of, or they lose the difference. So if they use 38, they lose those 2 hours difference. At the end of the 2 years, if they've not used the 80, it expires. The challenge I have right now is that in looking at my staff's vacation times, they really don't want to take vacation. They can't go anywhere or do anything. So it really would be, not sitting at the kitchen table that's long today is their vacation. And so I thought, would you consider as a board relaxing that that requirement, for vacations that would have maybe expired from April 1st of this year until maybe like the end of the calendar year, 2020, kind of relaxing those carryover rules and those expiration rules to allow them to kind of push it into the future where they could actually like take a vacation. Versus forcing them to take vacation time now. And, if they wanted to, they can. One of my staff is sitting in the woods today hunting turkey. So he's perfectly fine social distancing that way. But the other staff are kind of, they don't really want to take vacation time.
Yeah. No, we've done something similar, with vacation time, and personnel policies to be flexible. So I personally have no issue, but would look for the thoughts of the other members.
I'm good with
I
it.
agree.
I don't have an issue with it.
I don't have an issue either.
So the wording that I would suggest would be that maybe for vacations that would be expiring from April 1st of 2020 until maybe December 31st of 2020, the required expenditure, protocols would be relaxed and allow maximum carryover during that time period.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
So Melissa, the first was Mr. Griffin, second was Tim on that. Did you get that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Dan,
Yep.
go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to expand my screen and share my screen with you all a little bit here. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So we got our allocations for July 1 of this year. This is our standard WIOA allocations. So this sheet that you see on my screen now, WIOA adult program, Chemung, Schuyler, Stu, Ben. So during PY19, that's the year we're in right now, our actual allocation was $670,000, $670,567. Our allocation starting on July 1 is reduced by $132,702 by just shy of 20%. We'll only get $537,866 of new money in the adult program. If we go down to dislocated worker, this year's allocation was $393,135. Next year's allocation is $369,612, a reduction of $23,523, just under 6% reduced. On the youth funding stream, this year's allocation is $671,646. Next year's is 539,217, a reduction of 132,429, about another 20% reduction there. So when you add those numbers all together, we are just shy of 300,000 less dollars starting in July of this year than prior years. So I'm just kind of giving everyone a heads up. So for this year's expenditure goals, we've been on pace to spend our 80%. And I'll tell you on the admin, DW, and adult side, you know, we certainly are on pace to push out and try and hit very close to that 80% number. Youth, we are way behind because, well, I can't even write. I can, where most of my youth work experiences have went on hold and the trainings have been on hold. And anyway, so youth is tremendously underspent. The feds have waived the 80, you know, have basically given states flexibility to choose to kind of flush out those expenditure requirements. The state is saying that they're waiting on federal permissions to flex, but the feds have already said it. This sort of tells me something's going on in Albany. Bottom line, most of the other workforce areas, and we've kind of banded together and sort of, we've asked for a 70% versus an 80% expenditure level. Even at 70%, we're likely to give back some youth money this year. But so I won't know what I'm allowed to carry in. That's the long and the short of what I'm trying to say. I don't know what we'll have to carry in. I can work on that, but I can tell you for certain we are $300,000 less money than we have this year across the board. The two biggest ones being hit are youth and adult. Youth, I don't want to say it's okay, but I think the youth program is probably the easiest to flex out and handle the reduction. The adult is going to hurt. The adult money is our kind of our universal money that we use in our career centers. It's also the largest pot of money that we use, generally speaking, for OJTs and customized trainings. It's probably, well, historically anyways, the last few years has probably been 80% of the money we've even spent on ITA training. The dislocated drop is a tiny drop in the bucket. That's manageable. So when at the next executive meeting in June, I'll have a better idea of expenditures, and we can talk and look at some of that stuff, because we'll have to at the June meeting kind of have a budget put together that we're going to present to the full board in June to kind of start the year. So I'll start working, and if anybody wants to work through some of the expenditure side of the equation, I certainly would, be willing to do so. We can do it via Teams and kind of share and talk that way. But Patty and I will kind of hammer through that. From a budgeting perspective, I will tell you the other unknown is that I'm hearing numbers like $15 billion in phase 4 legislation of WIOA funds coming into the system. Not all through the workforce boards. I've seen it broken up, but I think the number I'm hearing right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of like $7 or $8 billion into the WIOA adult DW pools. Which would actually dwarf by a factor of 2+ the amount of money that, for those of you that were around, I think Tim, Griff, you were both around in back in the ARRA days during the Great Recession. The amount of money they're talking in phase 4 would be about a little bit better than twice that coming through our system, plus additional monies to the colleges and stuff. So the problem is I can't budget on those numbers because A, they haven't been passed, and B, I don't know the rules and strings and all that stuff. So the budget I'm going to put together, I'm going to build a conservative budget and try and maintain staffing and give us a start on our training budgets for next year using these WIOA, the actual allocations. And then when we find out if there is this money and how much of a wave of it is coming out, then we'll kind of amend budgets and kind of plan accordingly. So that's the allocations. Our picture looks really scary there. To be honest with you, the numbers don't, yeah, they're scary, but I was sort of half expecting at some point there was going to be a big drop off because WIO was kind of ending its days in terms of authorization. So usually when they get near the end of authorization, the money starts getting trimmed, and that sort of applies the pressure in Congress to get it reauthorized.
Hey, Dan.
So, yeah,
Dan,
please. Yep.
What was the, do you know, off the top of your head, probably not, but I'm going to ask anyway, what our actual was in program year 2018?
I don't have that right now, but I can get it.
That would be helpful to sort of know, sort of what does it look like for us? Have we been, what was our budget? I'm trying to remember, did
Sure.
we use all of the money, right? Are we like at the end of our rope on this, at the end, or are we where we had monies that we didn't use and we were trying to like figure out how to use them? Because I've heard that a lot since I've been here, like, oh, we got to hurry up and get the money out the door. So
Yeah.
this isn't as bad as what it sounds, right? Because we look for places to put money. I'm trying to get that sense, or
Sure.
not, right?
The
Or not.
gates. So here's
Yeah.
what I will tell you. Since I came back, and Tim as a training provider has heard this regularly, and I've even said it to the board that we're having a very hard time spending our money. And so the last few years, we have really struggled getting our 80% minimums out the door. And we've been really digging and scraping and whatnot and finding ways to not give the adult and PW money back. We have given some youth money back last year, although they did turn around and then give it back, most of it back to us this year, which is kind of why we have this huge glut of youth money. So are these numbers dire? If you look back over the last 2-3 years and our true expenditures, I would say no, they're not dire and it's manageable and we'll get through this. The challenge is that we actually have figured out and the machine has finally started working. So if you look at Ernie's reports in the ITA committee, 3 years ago, if we wrote 2 ITAs, it was a bumper year. This year, Ernie's, his team's churning them out. If you look at OJTs, good Lord, it took me almost 2 years to get 10 OJTs written when I came back. And then this year we've written like 30 of them. So the machine has kind of relearned how to do training and how to write the contracts and how to align and synchronize. I'm just going to pick on Tim because he's on the call. To synchronize, BOCES wants to set up a class in welding. They would like it to start on this date. However, they now understand that if they start on this date, that Ernie's review cycle for approving people to go into it is going to be out of sync with them. And therefore, they are now amending their start times to kind of align. And so the system has learned to actually work again over the last year and a half. And my fear is that, well, it's not a fear. It is a fear. If there wasn't this prospect of this phase 4 balloon of money coming down, I would be really afraid because now the system that we just built and we just got running, I'm now going to starve it of money and it's going to break down again. So my thought is to kind of use this, take the numbers that I know, map it out, and it will look ugly in terms of the amount of money we're putting into training in our regular budget. It will, because what my budget thought would be is to staff it, keep and really pay for the machine, if you will, with our standard WIO allocations, and then count on the fact that some pretty sizable dump of training money is going to come into the system when phase 4 goes through Congress. And then our machine that we have built and running will basically, run on those ARRA dollars.
I think we have to be really careful about that because I just think we need to be sensitive. That's what I'll say. Only because what you just said, that what I heard you say was, let's make sure that the administration is rolling so that hopefully we get money in for training. And in reality, our job is to get the training out the door, quality, great staff. And I'm just saying that because we want to be careful about how we're communicating that. Because that's the issue you have with nonprofits, is that all the money's going into admin and it's not going to the folks who need it. And so we don't want to get caught in that. That's all. Don't need to
Sure.
respond. That's just a statement. I'm just saying we need to be cautious.
No, I believe me, I'm always cautious to that, and I that's kind of why I'm giving y'all kind of a heads up, and I can change my tack. I can, and we can at the next meeting have an executive session, and I can talk. I can maybe have another proposal where I look at thinning the staff levels, and as a way to do that to keep our training dollars up. But there's not really. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of people out there on our payrolls and whatnot, but quite honestly, I don't believe we're real heavy on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and Dan, I would agree. I think in some ways it's a little early because we don't know what the new reality is going to look like in terms of training. I mean, my hope would be is that there would be a significant demand where we can push as much as we possibly can, but I just don't know personally, and I'm not as educated on this topic as most people on this phone, but I know it just doesn't seem like we know what the new world will look like yet. So.
I agree.
You've got a good group of people that it's been a little while getting back to this place. I think it's probably good to keep it the way it is for a little while.
Yeah, my thought is, I mean, I'm not to sound heartless or cruel or like I don't like my staff or any of those things. I really don't want anyone taking that away, because I think I've got a really pretty decent staff building here. But I'd like to maybe just keep them in place at least till I see if there's any money that comes through the pike. If there is no money coming down through the channels, if for whatever reason Congress and the administration can't, or they decide they don't want to pump money into it, we can certainly trim staff. I'm not averse to that. I just would rather not cut them preemptively and then be in a position where I don't have trained people when now I've got twice as much money as was under stimulus to push out the door, and I don't have any trained people to do it.
Yeah, we're as a local government taking that approach too. I mean, we're planning a number of different levers that we might need to pull at any one point in time, but so like you, we are prepared to do that if the reality comes that it's necessary. But based upon the unknowns, especially with potential 4.0 for stimulus, we just if that comes through, not that we don't look at other cost saving measures, but it might take off the need for staff reductions.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would agree with your suggestion, Dan, that maybe an executive session, within the next month, we'll have a much better idea, I think, of what funding will look like. Because if Congress doesn't act on 4.0, we're all going to be looking at draconian cuts. So I think I think we hold pat, in my personal opinion, for the next month, and then if we need to, we can adjust.
Okay. So that's really the conversation I wanted to have, was around revenue and really around basic approach that I'm going to kind of build the budget on. And I will do a secondary kind of rough cut of what we might look like if there is no phase 2. And then my thought would be that we maybe discuss that as a staffing issue in executive, because that's where most of the cuts would apply. And that way I don't get that word out on official records and all those fun things. But I wouldn't want any of my staff thinking, coming away from this, that somehow I thought they were expendable, because I just wouldn't want that out there.
Yep.
Dan, you're the manager of that. You've done a great job of containing costs over many, many years. And I mean, I have all the confidence in the world that you'll respond to either situation. And yours come back to the executive committee with recommendations, because I don't feel that certainly that I have been on there a long time, that I have enough knowledge to be able to say you're over in this or you're under in that, and your administration is high in this. I mean, that's what you do, and from my point of view, you've always done a great job with it. So I'm looking forward to your coming reports to the executive committee.
All right, so that's it for that agenda item. I've got to go to my agenda here.
Cornell lease.
Yep. So we had sort of initially put together, and I had asked for permission to potentially do a lease with Bosse's to kind of sit in their space on Main Street. This is really just an update. Bosse's did some market research, and they looked long term with this COVID downturn and yada yada yada. They're not going to be leasing that space. After, Tim, correct me, but I believe it's after June 30th of this year. So
Schultz office to say that we're not going to be able to continue, so we're got to go back and forth and figure out how that will end.
Yeah. So basically we will not be using those monies towards that. To be honest with you, one of the things that we've learned in some of the systems we've built working remotely and doing virtual services, particularly to young people in our emerging workforce program, is I probably don't actually have to have that space. Our emerging workforce team has adapted very, very quickly and very, very well. And they were really the primary need for that space. So I think, I certainly, if we had signed the dotted line on that space, we would have used it and maximized our investment in it. But the reality here is I think that the world moved underneath our feet a little bit, and we don't actually even probably need that space for the foreseeable future. So that's really just an FYI to you that we will not be using that.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. The business services report.
Yep. I'm going to share my screen again to kind of go over this with you so that you can see. So this is, everyone should be able to see my screen now. Is it big enough for folks to read, or do you want me to bump it up?
That's good.
Okay. So this is contract values written. The first section is OJTs. If you see them in red, that means that they were written and they started. However, they did not finish. The reasons for finishing could vary. It could be the person didn't work out in the position. It could be that the COVID took the position away. So you'll see a number of them. Bottom line at the bottom, had written 73,000, almost just shy of $74,000 worth of OJTs so far since July. Companies, really, we've had a good mix. We've had quite a lot in the TTA. They've been very aggressive in using our funding out that way. Namaste, which is a small operation. Ward Best continues their development and growth, and we're funding that. FM Howell kind of got back on board. Fagan Engineers, really a couple of cool. We tapped in for a little while that we were all the rage in the HVAC sector. Aaron's Heating and Chemung Heating and Building both jumped on board with us. The yellow highlights means these ones are paused. So these folks, the companies have their trainees on furlough or layoff temporarily, but they want them back, and so we will do amendments to their contract when the time comes. So those companies are Chemung Heating, Best LLC, TTA, and Hilliard Corp. Contracts for customized trainings. You can see, I'll just go to the bottom here. Total customized trainings written this year are about just over 112.5. And there's literally too many different topics to share verbally. So Jim, you'll have to look at the handout in your flyer to kind of get an idea. But we are the business community has really latched onto this idea of customized training. It's everything from some of the traditional manufacturers. Cameron Manufacturing continues to use it for tooling you. So a couple of these highlighted ones, they're on pause, but they also, even some of the smaller nonprofits have kind of gotten into that. to do things like leadership. Elmira Downtown Development is working to upgrade the quality of their staff by doing some IEDC trainings. And so we're kind of supporting some of those efforts. You see arc flash training. There's a lot of stuff here. But bottom line, that really the message here is that businesses, I mean, across the board, the businesses really latched on to this customized training. And it's good because it's a nice cost per for us, and it's a direct investment in people. So bottom line, at the moment, we've written about 186.5 between OJTs and customized trainings this year. A goodly chunk of them are on hold and will be mending and extending contracts. But we've written a lot. The COVID thing really brought this, I don't want to say to a halt, because we've been able to execute a couple of very small ones here recently. But we were really churning out there for a while. These are the two biggest that would be impacted by the cut in adult or in the adult funds for next year. So when I say that, you know, the adult funding is kind of that universal, very flexible stream, the vast majority you see on the far right column, you see adult on these. So these will be areas that our businesses will feel. So we're going to have to kind of walk a fine line to make sure we maximize as much adult funding as we can into these two streams. So I'll share my screen. Any questions on business services as far as training contracts? So one of the other things I've had the BIN team doing is actually doing some outreach to the business community. So I looked at the tracker. I'll look at the numbers, but by the end of this week, we'll have worked our complete list of our contacts across the 3 counties. We will have engaged, when all is said and done, knock on the wooden kitchen table here, probably just shy of about 800 businesses across the 3 counties. We've tracked it, we've monitored it, it's not just been a, hey, how are you, we're here if you need us type of conversation. It's been real engagement with the businesses. Sometimes it's hearing that they are out of business. Sometimes it's helping them troubleshoot and making connections. Sometimes it's really grief therapy, particularly at first. But I'm going through and kind of reading the comments and feedback and trying to look at some trends in there. And so I don't want to kind of spoil it, but I will tell you early on in this downturn, when we started the outreach, it was a tremendous amount of grief counseling. And the businesses, particularly the small businesses, were so thrilled to know that anybody was actually reaching out to talk to them. And we generated quite a lot of goodwill from that. I will tell you that the trend that I can see in the comments over the last couple of weeks is that businesses are showing tremendous creativity. They are really fighting to survive and figuring this out and how to be effective on it. So I want to kind of go through and migrate. I want to debrief with the team. I want to see if I can trend line and track and really put something that is meaningful down on paper for the board and for you guys when we in the very near future here. But I think it's been a great exercise for the team. We've made a lot of connections with businesses. We are going to continue, not to the scale, but we're going to be begin the process of circling back to some of those businesses and seeing where they're at. So that's really all I have on the business services report. Any questions, thoughts, concerns, comments?
Need a motion on that, Dan?
I think on the report for the OJTs and customized, just to kind of accept those contracts as they're presented, and then it'll also go to the full board. But just it gives us a little bit of cover in case anybody asks if the board had any idea we wrote customized or OJTs.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we accept his report.
Okay, Judy motion.
I can second. Tim.
Tim second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
All right. So the last phase, and this could be a 3-minute conversation, or it could be until you guys want to call it a day conversation. But we started a couple of weeks ago having some conversations, or trying to have some conversations with our partners in our career centers to just start talking about, at some point these are going to open. Are there big concerns that you're having and whatnot? Was only probably a week later, and then it sort of became all the rage with different things out there. And so there's lots of other people having these reopening conversations. What I shared was really kind of where we were at is a rough outline in trying to figure out how we're going to open our career centers and what that looks like. Did anyone have a minute to take a look at that, or do you want me to try and share my screen and kind of go through some of the highlights of where our thinking is at right now?
We did, and certainly, questions from the group. I would say Dan shared it with us, and out at EOC, I had my public health director, Darlene Smith, reviewed it, and she said it was very robust and looked good. We only had a couple suggestions, which Dan incorporated.
So really what we're looking at, and this is still draft, but we're visioning a 3-staged process. The initial stage really is just staff only in the centers to kind of reorganize them and take out the extra chairs and create the social distancing and all that, the actual physical layout, and kind of acclimate our staff again to working in an office environment. And then stage 2 would be really limited appointment only with staff. And that really will be to try out in a controlled customer flow by appointments only, to try. So everyone's going to walk clockwise when they're going to the career center, and just all the different kind of things that we have mapped out. But do it on a very limited, controlled, 1 or 2 customers at a time basis. And then stage 3 really would be allowing walk-ins into the career center again, but limiting the number of people in the center at any given time, so that we can maintain cleaning protocols and whatnot. So we've begun doing this and having this ProAction in Bath. We're going to be having some great conversations with them in the very near future to begin planning. And we don't have a date in mind. I mean, I chose dates just for argument's sake, but we really don't have dates because until we get permission from somebody to open. So it's really more of a week 1, week 2, week 3 type of planning process. But ProAction, we'll be having some conversations about our Bath Center. In Elmira, the college has a group of folks, and we'll begin kind of working with them on that space. I've not had conversations yet with the building folks in Schuyler County, so I'm not sure the status of how Montour is going to fly. I tried to have conversations with the Hornell, and I will tell you that I was rebutted roughly. So that in terms of trying to organize and have conversations with the Department of Labor staff, local staff, they wouldn't answer me. I got the answer directly from Albany, which is we're not talking about it right now. We're busy. We do have hardware failures in the Hornell Career Center. I get the little notices that the system's lost contact with the internet. So I asked if I could get an IT person in that space to fix the hardware. And they've said that no one is allowed in that building. I may not go in, period, end of discussion. So I don't know how my 2 centers, Hornell Center is going to be I think it's going to be a real struggle in that space because it's a state building. Unfortunately, I'm subletting from a state agency in that space, and I feel like I have absolutely no control over that. Because honestly, I don't think I do. Elmira's, that as far as the state staff returning to the Elmira Center, they have kind of their own little locked room. And so whether they come or go, we can kind of wall them off, or they've walled themselves off, I should say. They've kind of created a wall, and they can stay locked behind that wall, and the rest of the center could open, and we can figure out how to, begin doing some level of service down there. And Montour, I think, although I haven't had conversations, I suspect that with proper protocols, I'm not feeling terribly challenged up there, and Bath is going to be good. But my thought with you as an executive committee and ultimately the board, how fast do you Do you want me to fight to get these places opened as fast as possible? Do you want to try and, if a county says yes, then we go as fast as we can on the centers in those counties? Do you want to make sure when we open up to the world, we do it as, reintroduce ourselves to our citizens, that we do it as a 4-center, 3-county, uniform thing? I really would like some of your thoughts and input on reopening timing and process, and what do you think will work? How do you want me to plan this?
So Dan, I think I don't think it's going to go county by county. The conversations that we're having is it's going to be, the state is really controlling when we turn on and when we don't. There might be nuances within counties, but we're all planning collectively about our response. So my preference personally would be to open them up at the same time, if possible, knowing that, you have different landlords that you have to deal with. I agree with you. Proaction, Schuyler County won't be an issue. The others, kind of to be determined. The other thing is I would encourage the appointment only, and however you have to do that, that's what we're, as we phase in, and that's my next meeting with the legislature, how we're phasing in our reopening. We're going to, for not a small amount of time, really be doing things by appointment only, because if you have the mad rush, especially knowing the demand in the world that you live in.
You're breaking up, Jack.
Oh, so I would just say that appointment only, knowing that you have to try to maintain the social distance and you don't want your people to have to be traffic cops all the time. I would say appointment only is smart.
For an extended period, like for the foreseeable future type of thing, or just for a period of time to get used to it?
At least a few weeks, in my opinion, and then see how it's going. It all depends on what's happening on the ground, in my opinion.
Jack is the governor, and I try to watch his daily briefings, much as I watch your press conference every night, Jack.
Don't listen to me.
But I thought I heard the governor say that he was considering opening the state up by REDC regions instead of county by county.
You're correct. And so we are planning at the county levels with the counties in our region for opening, and you have to hit those metrics. So that's what essentially the input that we are, it looks like, able to provide is not what businesses can open when, it's do we meet the metrics that he sets to be able to open. Gotcha. And then Albany will dictate what you can open.
So a layer in that, just so you're aware of, Jack, a layer of complexity is that, so my Hornell Career Center in particular is a UI call center that covers not only Steuben County, but it covers over half of Allegheny and a piece of the southern Livingston County. So if you're on unemployment in one of those, in about half of Allegheny, basically Belmont East, all those UI folks go into the Hornell Career Center. So the Hornell Career Center, in terms of making a decision if it can open, will also be somewhat impacted, I think, by whatever the REDC in Livingston County and the REDC in Western New York do. The Elmira Center does grab a little bit of Tioga, but that's still our same REDC. So the Hornell Center is going to be particularly complicated if they try to limit it exclusively by REDCs.
Okay.
That's a function of UI catchment area. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's one of the things that I had asked was that, when they were talking about this regional stuff, is that don't be hard and fast to the REDCs, because honestly, the Hornell folks, they draw a huge, and even from just a retail perspective, they're drawing a huge base out of Allegheny and southern Livingston County. Alfred Elma School District crosses those lines as well. So, I mean, there's just the line, the geopolitical boundary there is arbitrary, and it will have impacts.
Sure.
right. So it's 8:45. I don't want to belabor the point. I will keep building, and you know, I'll look at stretching the by appointment time frame a little bit longer than maybe what I had visioned in there. And I'm gonna, in terms of a basis of our PPE protocols, I've been kind of looking as model the restaurant and bar industries, because so much of our business is that face-to-face sitting at the same desk with folks that I think the stringence of the restaurant and industry, I think, seems most applicable. Is there any advice you think I'm being too cautious? Because I could very well be being too cautious on that front, but that's
I
kind of
don't
how.
think you can. I don't think you can be too cautious.
Okay. All right. That's all I've got, unless you guys have, any of you have any additional questions or comments. Unless, you know, I should think about it. We reported out to operations and oversight yesterday. I just want, as an executive committee, to know we are fully functional across all of our programs with e-signatures and remote. So we can do everything from OJTs to resume help to enrolling young people into our emerging workforce program. We are fully e-signature and virtual capable at this point. I will tell you that we're if not the first that can say that universally across their workforce area. Certainly one of the top 2 or 3 in the state that are able to do that. So
That's great news.
That's it.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions?
Who was the first?
Griff, I think.
Griff was
Correct.
first. Yeah.
Okay, and Ernie was second.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. Have a great
and
day, folks.
Staff.
Thank you.
Bye now.